As far as being a registered agent, I'm not sure what his, I'm sure he is, he's saying, I'm sure it's true. But see, he never owned that property. And he did a tax break, some sort of subsidy. That land was, the company was in the names of the wives. All wives. Yes. And then that's how Harold went. It's like American cancer. And you were over there. It fell to him. And I don't think it was a happy time for the banks. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if we wound up with a salary up there. I wouldn't be surprised if we wound up with a salary up there. I don't know what it's mentioned, you know. Stormwater. Eddie Waters is through here, and that's what they owe stormwater. You have the ASF, you have these minority programs, the CDC, John Rock, these minor property owners. That's 90,000. Liberty Fiber still has a minor interest up there. And this is what you're talking about. Silva is a corporate entity that was related to these guys in the top. This is another one. Or it may be a different name. If they have impermeable surface, they have stormwater. Yeah, I had to go about, you know, that's Nichols.
If you're standing looking at it,
Yeah. I think it was about 507. Yeah, it was 500. I checked it a couple weeks ago, 4 weeks ago.
The owner of Southeast Landscape, which is on Joe, is it, not Joe Hall Road, Jay Bird Road, said that he was told, you cross the railroad track and his main entrance is there, but he was told they were going to close that. I don't know if
Yeah, I don't know. It's the landscape, Jay Bird.
yes, it's his own.
On the south side of the railroad tracks.
Okay.
But it would have to be the state, okay?
Well, I wonder if it's because they put that new railroad crossing thing that says no.
It's that new highway.
Yeah.
Big road. I know a little bit about that, I'll tell you some names.
That's the four lane, the
You know, I think it all relates to what Tommy was saying. You know, the city historically hasn't spent a lot of time and money doing it because county's in front. No, I'm not. Yeah, it's
Okay. I have a wide variety of issues, many of which we talked about a meeting or two prior. So as a follow-up, hopefully we'll bring some things to conclusion. First off, as we indicated as your pre-agenda meeting, there is a called workshop on the 24th at noon, at which time you will have conversations with DIA on final design for the plaza and the garage repair project. They will have materials here for you to look at in terms of color and pavers, and they may be here as early as Friday, Larry.
Yeah, the Thursday or, the goal is to have it set up Friday morning. There was logistics issues, but they should be here Wednesday or Thursday to put the items on the plaza, but they should be set up. They should be here to set up Friday morning, so.
So if you swing by Friday, you might get a chance, but if you could swing by a little early on Monday prior to the meeting, so you can give them some feedback on the final design. As we talked about in the meeting earlier, the bonds will sell at 11:15 on that morning. We will set up the site where we can watch the bids be placed and pulled, and we'll get an initial read on who's bidding on our bonds. Also, you'll hear from Chris Camp on the value engineering for the public works site to get that under your cost cap for the public works, as well as an update on Heritage Park and some tree planting schedules and some of those things we need to talk about, as well as a broad scope issue of how you want to manage the design of the community center. So those things will all be handled in your called workshop on Monday the 24th, starting at noon.
Tony, will Chris have us anything on what they come up with the Rotary or anything on Monday?
We're gonna talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
Okay, issue number one, we talked about the school resource officers and the price of those officers. I handed out a schedule, the chief handed out a schedule, and as you pointed out, they were different numbers. You asked us to reconcile those, and that's what this will do. In essence, the difference comes down to counting the number of days that they are in service. The chief's numbers had the days they were in service at schools, and the numbers I provided were gross total cost of salary and benefits. So when you take into account the number of days served in the schools versus those that they can do other city services, that accounts for the difference. I will point out that these costs are only payroll and benefits. There's no attempt to capture those costs for equipment, materials, training. Those other costs will be associated with providing the officer. But hopefully that will clarify that. If you have any questions, let me know.
Did Joey do this algebraic equation with these?
When it comes to ciphering, you can count that most of the time I'm relying on Mr. Barton, so yes.
Well, it's E divided by C and C minus D, that's what I'm talking about.
The training, make this a question for the chief. The training our officers get now, chief, is that provided, is that provided by us, or is that provided by the school system?
It's a joint funded, when the officers have to go annually for training, they have to, their basic police training they receive by us, because usually there are seasoned officers that we put in the school. We prefer to have experienced officers in the school, and so they have received their basic training most of the time for us, their 10 weeks academy training. Then when they go to the school resource program, there's a certification program, and a lot of times the school will participate with us in that, particularly in the recertification. The school will participate. They will pay, we will pay like the officer's salary while they're there in the school. Will pay.
How often do they have to be recertified, chief?
Annually, they have to receive training annually to hold those positions. It's state required mandated training. That's a 1 week school annual after they receive their initial certification.
Good investment.
Okay. All right, so that's school resource officers. We've been talking about that for some time. We may want to think about it prior to the renewal of the contract, but I think that will help clarify the cost of the contract versus the cost of the personnel. My next point is what Dennis just alluded to. As you're aware, the Rotary Club went and was successful in receiving a grant for construction of disc golf at Heritage Park. They need some feedback in terms of what we want to do. Their grant has a definitive timeline for them to move, and we need to give them some guidance. I know that Gordon is here and may be able to provide some more response to questions you may have, but we need to get in or get out or give some guidance and kind of see where we're headed on this piece of the puzzle.
Can I ask Gordon some questions?
Justin Cook is with me also from the service committee.
Gordon, is the grant, is it specific for disc golf, or is it could be
It
used
is,
for
it
other
is
things?
specific for disc golf. Yes, sir. In fact, there's several grants. There's a grant from the Rotary Foundation, which the Rotary Club has applied for and received. There's also a grant that Justin helped us with from the Jefferson Federal Foundation. And then we have some other monies which are raised money specifically for disc golf. It's about $23,000, which is the cost of the project. So, as you know, Rotary is very interested in disc golf in our community. We feel like it adds to our community from an economic impact perspective. We're able to recruit different tournaments to come to the Morristown area. And we think having another course would even further increase the interest in coming to Morristown for disc golf. One of the things we think is beneficial is it provides additional activities for the Heritage Park location. And the way this course would be set up is it's kind of on the outskirts, if you will. It would be out in the trees and then down a little bit closer to the road. But if you think about how disc golf is played, the only material parts of it are a pad, which is your starting point, and then your basket, which is, of course, where the discs are received or captured. So as far as the space is concerned, there's nothing that impedes the use of that space for other things. In fact, some courses you can actually take the basket out if you wanted to open up the area. So it's not as if the council approves us to move forward with this project, that you couldn't use that land for other things. So that basket could be taken out and you could have picnics on the greens or have other activities there. So it's not the type of course that you put in and that means you can't use that acreage or that area for other things.
So, am I understanding, Gordon, that you could actually put the basket in the ground in concrete, I guess, and use it for tournaments and things like that, and then take it out?
The basket part would come
Right.
out. Now there are tee pads, which
And the
are
key pads.
which the tee pads are usually concrete blocks, if you will, that
Right.
are down in the ground. But again, not to the point where you couldn't use that area for something else. The basket, a lot of times, will
What
have
about the standard,
chips
Gordon,
around
that
it.
the basket's mounted on? And you're talking about removing the basket and the standard that goes, that pulls
part,
out the
yes.
concrete?
Pull the basket out. You can take the basket part out, so you just have the piece in the ground, and you would have your pad if you wanted to use that area. for
Maybe-
But I think the question there is, you've got a foursome playing disc golf, and they're throwing a disc from the pad to the basket.
Yes, sir.
You couldn't have a picnic underneath
No,
where they're
sir,
throwing
no,
that
sir.
pad.
I'm sorry, I
I mean,
meant if you wanted to
it's-
have a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday or a week-long festival at the park and you needed to use that area for something else, you could pull up baskets and use the area. But you're correct, while the game is being played, you would not have other activities going on.
So, where my confusion comes in is that if you have a disc golf course up there, then you're saying that whenever somebody said, okay, I'd like to have a picnic, then you could go in and take those up.
I was thinking.
But it would be a disc golf course 95% of the time.
It could be, yes, sir.
And I think the way we envisioned it is sort of like other examples in the community where it's largely on the periphery. So it's on the outskirts, the perimeter, the wood line, and so without impact to the public having picnics, or, and I'm not very familiar with the overall design or layout, but like at Fred Miller Park, for example, or we play on soccer tournaments, these things are, I think they kind of enhance the overall area on the perimeter, so they're not disruptive of the overall nucleus of the park and the original intent. We also wrote the grants with the idea of really memorializing and honoring, what the grounds were of the Morristown College.
Okay, so that's another question. So you're saying that the grant is specific to Morristown, to the Heritage Park?
Correct, yeah.
Wow.
Maybe this is a question for Tony and Craig. we had the original designer who, architect or whatever you want to call it, that has done the other courses here.
Yes, HB Farm.
And his design took up a large part of that area. But I've heard from either Chris or somebody, or maybe you or somebody, that Chris's designer takes up less space.
Chris drew a design, an alternate design. It was not dramatically different.
So this is Chris sitting in,
One of the things that we talked about with Los was that if you wanted to, they would be willing to send someone from their Knoxville office down here and stake the course. So you could see where the tee box was, you could see where the baskets were, and you could see the distance from those facilities to other parts of the park to get a better feel for how it lays on the ground. Part of the thing is, what you're talking about is, if you're down at Cumberland, there's a pretty good slope up to the colonnade and a pretty good distance. Instead of trying to imagine it, if you want, we can ask that they stake that out so you can see it.
I think this is not going to do anything but enhance that park, because if you're going to have something up there to draw people up there, the park's not going to be used.
We've just built a $2.5 million disc park. And nobody appreciates your Rotary Club any more than I do. And I will resent anybody who says that I am not for the Rotary Club. I am. But you're talking about people who want to go up there and use that park in a passive park orientation. And we've got people throwing disc from one end of that to the other. That's nothing passive about that. And to say that they're going to bring people up there, look at the number of people who's at Cherokee Park playing disc golf. It's not that many until they have a tournament. Now, it is people. I'm not saying it's not used. It is used. But for us to take a $2 million park and turn it into a disc golf course is something that I just can't, I'm sorry, I just can't see.
Well, it's just going to be a portion of it.
No, sir, it's going to be the total of it.
All those dots.
It's going to be the total of it, because if you take where the pad is to where the baskets are, and disc being thrown between those two, on each one of those 18 holes, you're using up the total of the park.
On the perimeter, because it goes this way and then down along.
Did you all
It
not
didn't
bring,
in the thing that we saw before.
did you not bring that, put it up on the screen? Did you not have that?
No,
I don't think we have any visuals, and I may be missing parts of the debate.
You haven't seen the visual?
No, ma'am.
This is it.
But I just refer to the other parks, and I don't think it converts a park to a disc golf course. But my experience has been kids playing soccer and attending these as a family. It's not disruptive, but it really does enhance, and it adds, to the overall well-being of the community from an activity perspective, a tourism perspective, our ability to brand the community for these tournaments as a kind of disc capital of the area. So I'm not sure I fully grasp how it would convert a park rather than just enhance the proposed park.
The colonnade area, the green spaces that have been planned, the disc golf doesn't go into those. It's more out into the wooded areas and, as I said, down along the
but I
Cumberland.
thought
And
it
it may
made
be
a
this-
hill and came
It
along
did.
and covered
It
it.
did.
It might just be that the design has to be carefully considered to ensure that it does not disrupt or interrupt the family.
Your person who did the original design for the disc golf course did not do peripheral areas. It was all through the park.
I
In
think
in some of the
most,
wooded areas?
In the
Yes.
wooded areas and in,
I think,
It's down around the
Yeah,
whole.
there's some of the wooded areas.
I
and
think,
all around around Cumberland.
Yes.
Yeah.
down
I
along
think
Cumberland.
Lowe's, though, the way I remember it, he said that they would revise that and not bring it down there.
No, they said they'd try to keep it in the woods, and they turned that down completely.
Yeah, they explored a couple of things. One is trying to work the 18 holes within, entirely in the woods, and the length of the holes simply didn't work to make it a viable course. The other thing we looked at was simply doing a 9-hole course, and we don't think that that's going to attract the players to make it a viable facility.
And if you use it for a running thing for the track teams,
and Gordon, I really appreciate what you've done and what the Rotary Club does,
Oh,
and
I
then
do
Lauren,
too.
you're a part of that. But I think we got the cart before the horse in here, because, you all didn't realize, I really sincerely don't think that you realized that the council as a whole had bought into this and had approved it. And you're doing good like you always do in your projects, but from what we were given,
Okay, so the-
it looks like the golf,
Is this-
even though it does come around the front, it surrounds it. It's like a surround around.
Does go
it.
around
Yes.
on the perimeter.
And,
It's all-
and you're not gonna have, it's like Tommy's saying there, you're not gonna really have, people there all the time. They're intermittent, and then when you have, but you have a couple or a family who wants to come have a picnic, and they spread their picnic out, and then all of a sudden, then the disc golfers come
Here's
around.
your,
There, I gave them one.
oh, you got one?
Yeah.
That's, if you look at the areas of you've got the colonnade is not included in it, nor is the old baseball field. But the disc golf takes in everything else on that 54-acre tract.
As in this section here and
All
then
those,
down.
all those numbers are disc
Right.
golf balls.
It's not the peripheral area. If you look up here where all the numbers are, and this is a colored one that you might be able to see better.
Yeah, this is,
Oh,
same one.
okay.
See?
Gordon, I think if we maybe condense the comments here, I think the council was majority pretty much pro disc golf until we saw how much space it was actually gonna take up, and we got a little bit overwhelmed by the vision that it was gonna be in the woods to where it was actually, took up much larger space than what we had thought it would be. And that's what's become problematical, is the size. Certainly, the amount of money that Rotary's brought into our parks and recreation is a valuable part of our community and what we offer to the public, and don't want to minimize that at all. It looks as though this project, I think the feeling of the majority of the council is, correct me if I'm wrong, they often do, but is that it's much bigger than advertised, and that's what's giving us pause. If we can reduce it and keep it inside there, and looking at the reductions there, you can see where Lowe's reduced it some, but I don't know that it's enough.
What would be, if I may ask, what would be the proposed use of the wood line without a park? Just trees?
Well, I don't understand where you're saying that. If you look at the very top, you're in a wooded area that comes all the way down to the parking lot. And if you look at down on Cumberland, you're taking in more land for the disc golf than you have for the colonnade. I don't understand how you can say that that's peripheral around the park.
But back to your question, we talked about walking trails, we talked about bike trails, we talked about access for cross-country, for the two high school cross-country teams. I know West and East both use, I think, Panther Creek now, mostly West. But I know I've got a neighbor who was injured in a cross-country from a congested area. I didn't know cross-country runners had spikes, but he fell and got spiked real good and had to have stitches and stuff. But I'm a Parks and Rec guy. I worked there for years. I was involved in it as volunteer. I'm sort of like Tommy. We've spent a ton of money on a piece of property. And I don't want it as a designated disc golf. I don't know if Craig's staff would be able to go and move those baskets and stuff, if we had something else scheduled, but I think in just the day-to-day activities of that park, it's gonna be a disc golf park.
That would be one activity available at the park.
And I realize local people have got enough disc golf courses in Hamlin County right now. I know the chamber wants to, it's a recruiting tool as far as tournaments and tourism and stuff, and I am big on tourism. I think that's just another engine that drives this community is tourism. but I hate to take up a whole park for this golf course.
I think the problem we have, and I'm just gonna go ahead and say it, I think the problem we have is that from the very beginning, when we had the concept and the mindset of what this park would be, and I don't know whether the chamber, the Rotary Club went through the Parks and Rec Department and came up with the idea that they would build a disc golf course up there without ever talking to the council. I don't know how that came about, but it all of a sudden hit us that here's what we're gonna do with it. It's gonna be a disc golf course. And it's almost like me coming up there telling you what you're gonna do at the hospital. You really like to be in the know about what's going on.
Absolutely.
And this council really didn't know that until I got calls from the Chamber of Commerce and said, why are you so much against a disc golf course? I'm not against the disc golf course. I'm against something that everybody can use and everybody would enjoy. Now, if you want to put the pads and the baskets up there and then put them up there whenever you have a tournament, I can see that happening. But to say that we're going to put them up there and everybody have a disc golf course for people from out of state and out of this area to come in so they can play disc golf here, at the cost of the local people being able to have other things going on up there, that's where I have the problem.
And we apologize if there was miscommunication. We thought we were,
Yeah, we never did know.
understanding that
We never
we
knew
were trying
anything
to
about it
plan
until we were told
to raise
that
money for it.
till it was gonna be, and I guess Parks and Rec has to take the blame for that, because
I don't know that anybody's to blame. I think we all thought, we were all discussing how we could make a disc golf course work in the perimeter of Heritage Park, and that would be an enhancement to what was being planned. It wouldn't disturb the other ideas and concepts that were being created, because it was such a large area.
Yeah, and I think we came here tonight not realizing there was such objection or confusion around the matter or miscommunication. Our intention really was to provide a benefit to the community,
Oh.
something to add to the tourism.
we
I
know
think the
that.
size of it's what's really the bottom line.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that was, it just came in much, took up a lot more space than what
The
we're
club needs
willing to use,
The
so.
club needs to do some things to manage their grant application. They need to hand the grant back, or they need to work some other angle with the fund. They need to get, I guess we've gotten feedback that that's the consensus of council.
Well, certainly, I think the feedback you need to hear is that we are pro disc golf and we're pro Rotary Club. We would like to find another place for that. Tonight was the first night, I think, that I knew, and maybe the other board members knew, that this grant was specific to,
Or disc golf, yes, sir.
not to disc golf, but that it was specific to Heritage Park. So somewhere, whenever this application was made, that we want to put a disc golf in Heritage Park, the conversation was not with this council. It was with somebody else. And I'm assuming that it was with Craig Price, not with his council, because we didn't know that. We only knew, did you all know that it was specific to Heritage Park? I didn't know anything about
I
it.
didn't know it was specific to Heritage Park, I knew it was specific to disc golf.
Yeah, I knew it was specific to disc golf, and I think, but you all do a fantastic job. Please don't think that we're anti-grant from what you all have done for this community. It's, nobody can touch it.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on. Okay, next item, number 4 of 8. Last time we talked about disposition of furniture from the old Station 4. Chief Honeycutt prepared an inventory of materials that's in the facility.
I'll just tell you what you can
And I don't know, Butch, in general, the viability of this is not great. Is that a fair characterization?
That'd be a fair characterization.
I missed that, Tommy, what did you say, Tommy? I
It's
missed
not worth much. Let's put it that way.
It's all highly used.
So, but you were asking about, could we give it to charity? This is your code section on surplus property. And since Lauren reviewed this, I'll let her explain, if you wanted to do that, how you would go about that. But we need some direction from you, whether we want to declare it surplus and dispose of it, or just sell it with the government. So Lauren, kind
That
of
was the second thing you said.
sell it with the building, it's
Oh, okay.
as is.
That, I didn't hear that. That's
You
what
get
I
the
missed.
contents and all is one of the things that you can consider. Lauren, if you wanted to do something else with the stuff in terms of property, what would be the process?
I mean, I think just again pursuant to our ordinance, we're gonna have to look at declaring it surplus property now. You know, looking at pictures, if you all would say that it was, you know, basically less than $1,000, even altogether, I think then the city administrator would have the authority to, you know, dispose of it.
Can we designate a charity or a nonprofit or something to take it?
I mean, I think it could. Again, as long as it's less than, if you think the value's less than 1,000, if you think the value's more than 1,000, that's when you all dispose of it, sell it, high school.
Something to give to me. Better throw my guy. Rest claim.
Chief, would you say it's less than $1,000?
I would, based on the age and the needs of the kids.
Okay, then we can designate the city administrator to make a decision, correct?
And we should give it to the fire chief as a memento of the old station.
Okay, and Chief, the First Methodist Church is having a rummage sale at the end of September, and, you know, somebody, one man's trash is another man's treasure, who knows?
If we're going to do that, we would still need to declare it surplus before disposing of it. So it will be on your agenda for October 2nd. Is that?
You don't want it, Tony?
I do not want it. I have too much of my own junk.
Tony, how many $1,000s is it gonna cost us to get rid of this?
We've already spent more money than it's worth.
That's what I figured.
They'll come get it.
If it was me, I'd leave it to the building, sell the building, the guy that buys the building has to deal with it.
Can't you just let the Methodist Church have it if they'll come and get it?
You could, you're saying it's less than $1,000, I mean, not sell it to them for $1.
Do we need?
What if K&M turn around and make a profit?
do-
I've seen her twist arms before.
I think we have a blossoming scandal there.
In any case, we still have to declare a surplus, is that correct?
Yes.
So we can't do it before your next meeting. If you want to do that, we'll put it on the agenda. Is that what you want?
Yeah.
Okay. Following on with Station 4, we talked last time, we distributed the appraisal. We talked about listing the property. We prepared a listing agreement with the realtor. Are you comfortable with me executing that agreement, or do you want to see that on your next agenda for your review and consideration?
I'd be comfortable with you executing that. What's the preference of the council?
I agree.
Agree.
I agree.
Okay, that's it for Station 4. Dice Street property. The city attorney's office has been working with TCAT to find out the way to make the transfer take place. Lauren, have you got an update on where we stand?
I know we've been in contact with we've been given the information for TCAT's attorney. Basically, we're working on preparing a letter of intent to deal with how we're gonna, the documents we're
Will
preparing.
that title be with the Tennessee Board of Regents, or will it be with something else? How will that be deeded over?
I don't think that was clear in the initial meeting.
Yeah, I think that's why we need to have a conversation with TCAT's attorney to just figure out.
It's either the state of Tennessee or the Board of Regents. There's a mixture of named property holders for the existing TCAT
Do they
counties.
have a local attorney?
No, it's
No,
not.
no, yeah.
They gonna charge us rent till we vacate the property?
That's
No,
the
they
question
won't.
to be concerned.
That won't get approved.
That probably
Well,
would.
there's been some things get approved, I didn't think it happened either, but it did.
So we're working on
Just
that
like be
piece.
sure of that going in.
As we talked about earlier on the right-of-way, we're working on facilitating the private agreement between TCAT and the club with regard to maintenance of the driveway. The property would go to the two adjoining property owners, so they both have skin in the game, if you will, so I think that's all moving. But I think we're moving, but not at a rocket pace, is that fair to say?
Right,
The other thing that is a complication about transferring this property, and it goes to your question about who's paying rent, is we have a tenant on the site, it's not us. The Humane Society is on there. TCAT very much wants to get access to the property and begin moving sooner rather than later. I don't know how you want to deal with the Humane Society and motivating them, notifying them, dealing with their.
There'll be dogs barking as we pull out of the gate the last truck.
Based on the past track record, I'd have to agree with you.
You're gonna have to just set a deadline and tell them they gotta get down. They're not gonna like it, but you don't have a choice.
Is we've communicated to them before they need to be out, that deadline's already passed. They've acquired a building, they've hired a design firm, but as far as I know, that's pretty much where they stand. They're in the middle of fundraising.
What did we do for them to be able to get that property?
That, I don't know, somebody that was here long before me.
Which property you
The
talking?
new property that they got.
We didn't do anything.
We didn't do anything. They bought it on their.
They bought it out of their funds.
Well,
They,
one time
they
we were
came to
having-
the planning commission about a piece of property out at Buffalo Trail.
Yeah,
And that was turned down,
That was
yeah.
a zoning issue.
And that was turned down, and then they purchased that property up there where the old Union Hall used to be.
But one time we were gonna give them $100,000 to help them with their moving expenses. That was back when they were redoing their agreement. You remember that, Gary?
Yes.
Was there $100,000 worth of stuff in that they were gonna either leave, take, whatever?
I think we put that into not just the moving expenses, but into their, new building fund.
We did or we will?
We discussed it. There's nothing in writing beyond that discussion. No pledge, no agreement.
We still do our annual contribution.
We have a contract with them to provide animal control, and so we paid them for that contract.
You pay monthly?
Yes.
The county up there, I was told, the county up there contribution to the Humane Society. But we did what we were requested to do.
That's right. We didn't receive a request for an increased amount during the budget process. I know there was talk about the county increasing it. I can't say for sure.
I was told that when we were at our retreat in Kingsport, I got a phone call about it, but
I think they went up 15,000.
But it's a concern, do you want to do something as a council? Would you rather have the attorneys to draft something? Or how do you want to deal with this problem? Because if we don't deal with it, we're going to be sitting here talking about how we're going to deal with the problem
So
again.
we're talking about an exit strategy.
We don't have any idea of a timeline when these contracts will be concluded and they will be able to physically get on the property.
My impression is weeks or months.
Well, then why aren't we telling them that at a certain date, the TCAT has control of that property, and part of the deal is that they will be moved?
Yeah,
The question is, what would happen if they don't?
One of the models that is being discussed is we transfer the deed and have a license to continue to operate. I think that's one of the things being discussed with the folks at the state. The thing is, what do we do about the Humane Society in that environment if TCAT owns the property and they're still there?
TCAT could start a program on training veterinarians or something.
Animal husbandry.
Could we give them a deadline December 31st, the property needs to be vacated. And that's, if we might devise a plan to assist in that move.
Is that something you want to chew on a little bit? Is that something you'd like the attorneys to convey?
I'd like for you and the mayor
Oh, thank you.
and attorney, if needed, meet with their board or something and tell them what's going on.
I would accept that as if they, perhaps the mayor, city administrator, our attorney, Mayor Britton, and the chairman of the Humane Society Board, and let's map out a specific plan, a date specific, and a plan to make that move. Would that be acceptable to the rest of the council? And I'll report back, or tell me to report back. You okay with that, Chris? Tom, you all right with that?
Yes, I think that's a great idea.
All right, that's what we'll do.
Enough puppies and kittens. Issue number 6. We discussed at the last meeting the contract with your financial advisor for debt. And you asked me to come back with a timeline for the next refunding issue that MUS will be doing. And it is quicker than I had anticipated. This is the original issue was $20 million. It matures in 2033. But in order to move forward with refinancing these bonds, MUS board will need to take action in late September, early October. So our window for going to the market to interview and perhaps select a different financial advisor is fairly limited. It would appear, based on the schedule, that we need to consider extending the contract for financial advisor for this additional issue if you want to allow for the refinancing of the next issue from MUS.
I could go along with that, provided we get the contract as we indicated in the changes in the last contract when we approved that, and that we get copies of that, and we, as a council, have the opportunity to approve the fee letter as well as see the contract before it is mailed off.
Okay. I'm not sure the sequence of events, but we'll bring this all back to you for your consideration in October 2nd meeting.
Are you saying that you want the fee letters for every single one of these dates to come back and council to actually look at it?
The fee letter for the contract, they're in the contract, and I have that copy, if I'm sure we all have that. It says that the mayor, it had the city administrator of finance and the mayor would come up with Cumberland Securities with a fee letter. And we added in there with council approval. And that has been executed and mailed off and never shown to council. That's one letter. It's not
What
for
was
each.
on there that you worried about or didn't think that needed your eyes to be on it? What, I don't get it.
Well, we all, go ahead.
Sure, the fee.
Right. And the fee's not been paid. We can bring that back to you.
I mean, that appears to council. I mean, council could vote on that, right? We have to actually look to see that you really did what you said you did.
Well, what is the figure in it? Joey can't read.
The contract, as far as I know, is not established. It says there'll be a letter. Am I remembering wrong?
So you're saying the letter can be sent and then the fee amount on the letter could be changed?
No. The
It can't
letter could be sent, I'm not following you. The
Explain.
contract has been executed for the services.
Right.
The fee is to be established by a letter to be considered at a later date.
Okay.
Now, in the workshop, we talked about 1/2, 1%. I mean, I don't think it's any secret.
No, it's not.
It's
But,
just the process that the council is involved in. It's
Right.
quite a bit of money.
right, but the contract, executing the contract that you approved, that wasn't a prerequisite for that.
No, but we didn't know I didn't know until I asked today in the finance committee that had been done. I called Debbie, and Debbie said that Joey was handling that. Remember,
Right.
Debbie?
No.
And
It was voted and approved by council as amended, and that's the contract that was executed. Lauren, you reviewed, made sure the amendments were reflected in the contract.
I mean, we're all on the same team here, right?
That's what I thought. But there's a lot of things happen that I found out later, after the fact, what happened.
Name one.
I can name a bunch of them, including everybody on this board, including you.
I don't get it.
I don't either.
Well, it's
Why
just
would
like-
it be an issue that you not get that?
How many more numbers you got? We ain't getting nowhere doing this.
I got two more.
It's just like
Go
the
with
disc golf course.
Okay. Last time, we talked about the CDBG facade program and the areas to be covered. You asked us to redraw the map. This is the redrawn map, hopefully reflecting the areas that you requested. It expands along AJ and Morris, east and west. If we have failed to,
And North Liberty Hill has been added to it too, hasn't it? Was it on the original?
that's a little jog where the road jogs. So, assuming that is the area you want to go, it would be our recommendation that you provide an emphasis for the central business district, a priority, if you will, for the committee that will review applications. With this larger scope, I expect that you will have increased applications, which was our original objective for expanding the area. We do need,
Tony, question, why would you make an emphasis on, I mean, it's already been offered downtown multiple times, why would you still make an emphasis on downtown?
my understanding from council is that you still want to concentrate your money downtown if there are takers. If I'm wrong, let me know and we'll,
Give it to
To me personally, I think the North Cumberland, South Cumberland is more in need of facade deal than downtown is, to me.
You need to go by there and look close.
well,
Let me
which
give
brings
you a
up
tour.
the question for the piece of paper that I just handed out. We have a review committee that looks at these applications, ranks them, and if we have more applicants than we have dollars, some get funding and some do not. You can see the committee we've had last year, proposed committee, given council's interest in expanding the scope and the types of businesses that might be there. It would be our suggestion that someone on council serve on that committee so that we can have y'all's input into the process up front.
Yes. Good man.
So you're taking Josh and Rich off?
Well, we're trying to keep an odd number, so yes, that's trying to keep it down to 5. Rich was there to round it out as a person in the planning office, so.
I think Dennis is the man.
Dennis sounds good.
Dennis sounds good.
Dennis, if you want me to, I'll appoint her.
Dennis sounds
It's up to Dennis.
As long as they meet.
good. I like the coverage that you have there.
And kind of following up on what Dennis said, where the greatest need is, we can't make somebody participate, right? We might find somebody in dire need of fixing up the facade of their building, but if they don't, we can't force them, is that right? We might say your facade looks like it needs some work, they've got to spend half of what we give, or equal to what we give, is that right?
That's correct, that we will match dollar for dollar up to $5,000.
Ask Ken, has that improved the appraisal value of some of the properties downtown?
Sure it has. Yes, it has.
Because you've done that to improve those, haven't you?
Well, I've not gone through
We
them
haven't
all,
gone through this.
but, yeah.
So are you comfortable with the membership of the committee to make the determinations for the allocation of the funds? And Dennis never said yay, nay, or grunt, or hit under the table. We would like to have someone from council.
You just said yes, I heard.
What was it about here?
Oh, is that what you said?
That's what I heard.
That's a yes in most books, so, all right, if you're comfortable with that, we'll report to you as we go through the program about where we go. We'll try and get you a copy of the application materials.
So they like the planning commission, do they have a meal?
Well, we'll see if we can get you a sandwich. It's probably a good sandwich.
It's a 50/50 expense.
Is it?
Okay,
Can't be over $50.
Half a burden.
Well, you gotta pick up half the cost and then keeping with the cleaning.
all right, we've got a couple of other capital projects that we need to talk about that are smallish in compared to the scope of some of the other ones, but they are significant enough that we need engineering services. One is the resurfacing of the tennis courts in Reno, and the other is replacement of fire station roofs on stations 5 and 6. All of those will require professionally stamped plans in order to move forward based on state code because of the dollar amount of the project. We would like for you to give us some guidance as to who you would like to have handling those projects and how you'd like to go about it. What I'm handing out is all the architect and engineering firms that we have under contract. If you are comfortable with one of these firms, we can ask them to prepare you a proposal and you can look at it as a task order. If you are not comfortable with these firms, we would need to go to the market with an RFQ for qualifications, review and select firms, rank them, and come back to you and recommend another firm. But these are the firms that we have currently under contract that you might want to consider for these projects. Again, this is tennis court resurfacing, which is basically a milling up asphalt and resurfacing, repaving, and then coating, and then the roof on stations 5 and 6.
Let me, on the resurfacing of the tennis courts, is that something you have to have is that not something you could just extend the street paving program or something?
Wait, Joe, I'll let you explain.
Well, a little bit of challenge is it's undefined, since it's going all the way down to the base, essentially, you're starting over with a new asset. So, state statutes, anything over 50,000 has to have a stamp.
Probably these right here, do they have to bid the project?
No, sir. Since they're under contract, they can have a task order that would come to you for.
Well, that's right, these, they don't bid projects anyway professionally.
Right.
Is 5 and 6, is that the two newest stations?
Yes.
I mean, not counting 4.
Yes, yeah, I forgot, 4 is new.
Yes.
Station 5 is approximately 13 years old. Station 6 is approximately 11 years old. When we did the research, we found it was a 10-year roof, and so they've started to deteriorate.
What kind of roof is on there, Chief?
Yes. That's what you get for cutting corners.
Did you say a 10 roof or a 10-year roof?
10-year roof, 10-year, I'm sorry.
It's a rubberized material.
That seam?
3 pictures.
Well, who on here is good at roofs? DIA or LDA or?
Well, if you think about what they're doing on the plaza, this would be very similar to what DIA is
I
doing.
would think so, because they've been really good about making sure we've got the best.
So that, in terms of architectural services, I think the projects we have been working on, they would be the most natural fit.
Guys, I say DIA,
Yeah, Tony, are you saying you've got to have an architect
the ones you picked.
approve that?
An architect or an engineer, depending on what the project is. They've got to stamp the plans because we're spending $50,000.
More than I am using right here.
Can we go with the same group that's doing the plaza?
Both of it.
In
DI,
here.
I think, without a doubt, is the roof.
They're more professional.
And
But we don't go 10-year roof.
Well,
What's the specs, Chief, if we redo it? Or is that up to the engineering?
Yep, they'll come back. What we would anticipate, if you were to select DIA for the roof, we would have them come back with a proposal that would have cost and what they would do for that money. And just like they did with the plaza, they will give you a range of options on if you want a 10-year, 15, 20, 25-year roof. Here's the estimated cost.
Do you have any problem with it, Tony?
No, when I looked at the list, I thought on the roof that was the obvious one to go with.
Yeah.
Tennis court's not as clear.
They're professional.
Now, you can divide the projects. I don't know what you want to do with the tennis courts.
Spray it with some of that tar.
But I mean, we need
Same
professional.
thing. It lasted long.
You need to go, this needs to
Did
be
we
done
use
before
the
the
same
winter.
roofs on Station 4?
Well, there was 5,000. It was a 5-year
You know,
roof. It was a 5-year roof.
I ain't gonna need extending it, is it?
All right, you
Just
want
get
to,
us-
you got a proposal from DIA on the 2 roofs. What about the tennis courts?
See if they're
Ask them.
asking if they, you know,
They know a lot about those materials.
Okay. So what we will do is we will come back and give you a written proposal as soon as they can get it, hopefully at the next meeting. You might take the opportunity to discuss that at your called work session on the Monday the 24th. All right, that's my prepared list. As I indicated, you've got your workshop on the 24th that has a mountain of work. And I will be out of town while y'all are meeting, but you have your consultants to deal with that. And then on the 2nd, I have a similar long list of workshop items, and we'll have to pick and choose and see what we can get done in time.
refresh my memory on the tennis courts. You said it would have to be milled, or would it have to be taken down to the base?
Yeah, take it down to the base.
Take it down to the base.
The cracks are just not solid.
Tony, when it said, in your invitation to the called work session that we would be talking about the design of the community center. Now, are they coming, or is this another wish list session?
No.
Or what is it?
The conversation about the community center is how you want to manage the contract you have with Lowe's and Associates. How often you want to see them, what questions you want them to bring to you at what stage of the game. We have a contract with them to draw plans up to 40% completion. And we want you to talk to them about how you want to manage that contract.
Well, I think what we found that happened is they were farther along in the they were 40% along in the process. And then we met with them, and some of the things that we wanted to, every change you make is money, is what it is.
Where's that money coming from? We're broke.
So I think we really need
It's
to.
included in the bond issue just approved. $500,000 was included in the bond issue for design of the community center. So,
This is
that's
as
the
far
point of
as-
the conversation.
This is as far as we're funded right now.
That's
We're
correct.
not- We don't have a spending plan to construct or anything like that.
No.
We're just looking at design work, drawings, that's all we're doing.
500,000 for the design, right? Is that what you said?
The contract is not that much because
It's based on a percentage up to that 40% factory.
Sounds like a lot of money.
Well, I just don't want us to get to the point like we have on some things where it's too far down the pike to make a change.
well, as it stands now, we've had one kickoff meeting where the pool consultant came and looked at our facility. That's as far as it's gotten. We put a hold on it, waiting for you to have a conversation with Mr. Camp about how you want to manage it. That's the point of the discussion.
But we have had the discussion about the layout on the inside previous to this.
You had paid for and received a concept plan.
Yes.
What you're doing now is looking at detailed design drawings on how you build that concept.
Is that also the material, not carpeted or polished concrete?
All those things go into the design.
What kind of lockers you put in the locker room?
Yes, all that. Eventually, that probably is not within the scope of the contract that you currently have, but how you get there is what you're talking about.
Okay, what would be very helpful is a bullet list of what we will be able to have input into on the 24th.
I mean,
That's the purpose of it.
you are going to be talking with Mr. Camp about how you want to manage that. Anything's on the table. Within the, if you want to spend more than the contract is, he'll tell you it's going to, you're going to put more money in that. You want that money.
So in other words, okay. It's as clear as it's gonna be, yes.
That's the point. We want you to work with your designer to make sure you get what you want. All right, that's what I have, unless there are other things we failed to cover adequately.
It's an industrial breakfast on October the 3rd. I just opened the envelope.
Okay, I'll buy your ticket.
For the industrial breakfast? Okay.